Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Maisie and today we are doing my February reading wrap up. So in the month of February I read 7 books and DNF'd 1 book. So let's get into it. Oh, I also just realised I haven't given context to my jumper. Today, when I'm filming this, is the first F1 race of the 2024 season. So I, of course, am wearing my Charles Leclerc jumper in support of Charles Leclerc. Not delusional enough to think that he's going to win, but if he can get a podium, I'll be very happy. As usual, I'm going to start with the books I didn't include in any reading vlogs, and then I will go into the ones that I did include in reading vlogs, but maybe include a little bit less information about those. And I will leave the reading vlogs for the month in the description below so you can go and check those out. So to jump straight into it, the first book is The Happy Ever After Playlist by Abby Jimenez. I don't know why that title is always such a mouthful for me. So in this book we are following Sloane, and at the start of the book she finds a lost dog and she tries to contact the owner through like the details on the dog's collar, but she can't get through to the owner, and so she decides to temporarily keep the dog and look after it because she doesn't want to send it to a shelter. The owner does eventually get in touch with Sloane, and turns out he is our male main character and his name is Jason. Jason is a musician and he is on tour in Australia at the moment. Somebody else was supposed to be looking after his dog, obviously doing a very bad job. So the two of them agreed that Sloane can continue to look after the dog for a few weeks and then he will pick up the dog when he gets back from his tour. But while he's away they kind of start texting and develop a flirty friendship. So that's kind of the starting plot of the book and all you need to know going in, but to be honest, I'm surprised reflecting on how this book starts to how much actually happens in this book. Like, there is actually quite a lot of plot. I'm not gonna lie, the first half of this book wasn't amazing for me. I found Jason in particular quite cringy, and also I found it all a bit insta-love. However, the second half of the book really picked up for me, and quite a lot of drama. There's some quite deep topics as well that we touch on in this book. The romance is quite sweet and I did enjoy it, although I do still think it was a little bit insta-love. Overall, I'm going to give this book 4 stars. I think it was a perfect little short, quick, easy rom-com. But as I said, there are still some quite deep and emotional topics covered in this book. So yeah, I would definitely recommend. This is my second ever Abby Jimenez book. The first one that I read is Part of Your World, which I also really enjoyed. I know that this is actually the second book in the Friend Zone series. I think there's 3 books in the Friend Zone series, and I haven't read the first one. But this one just sounded good to me. So I don't know if I'm ever going to read the first one. Maybe I will. Please let me know if you think The Friend Zone is good, and also the third book in this book, if you've read it and think that that's good. Can't remember what the third one's called. But if you've read that one and recommend, please let me know. But yeah, overall I do really like Abby Jimenez's writing. I liked the plot of this book and I was drawn to it because of the dog. So next we have One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig, and this is the first book in the Shepherd King duet. So this is a gothic fantasy romance and it has a really unique magic system which is centered around cards. So this is set in a town called Blunder that basically has a dark mist that lingers and infects people, and anyone that is suspected of being infected
will be sentenced to death.
Our main character, Elspeth, has lived her life mainly in hiding because when she was younger she was infected by the mist. And as I said before, if you're thought to be infected, you will be sentenced to death. So she obviously doesn't want anybody to know that she has been infected. As a result of her infection, she has a strange voice in her head that speaks to her and that she speaks to. In this book, she comes across a strange highwayman, or a group of highwaymen, but one in particular. The two of them find out that they share a common goal to basically collect all of these magic cards and find the cure. I thought this book was so good. I did find it a little bit confusing at the start and like difficult to get into just because it's so different to any other fantasy romance I have read. I can't wait to read the second book this month, get back to this world and the characters, because yeah, I just loved it, had a great time. Overall, I am giving this book 4.25 stars. I really loved it. The romance I really enjoyed, but it's not like my favourite fantasy romance ever, so that's why it's not kind of quite up there near a 5-star. But yeah, still really good and definitely recommend. Also, it's not too long, which we love. Fantasy books aren't long. Okay, the next book that I read was a reread, and that was Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home. I decided to reread this in anticipation for Into the Dark coming out, and I had already reread the first Magnolia Parks book towards the end of last year, so I just wanted to pick this one up, and oh my god, I think this may be my favourite book of all time. Like, goes without saying, this is a 5-star, this is a 6-star, this is infinity stars. My absolute favourite book. I loved it just as much, maybe even more the second time. I don't have much else to say. I'm sure you've all heard about the Magnolia Park series. series. I bang on about it all the time, and I know so do a lot of other booktubers. It is a romance series where we follow a group of wealthy socialites in London, basically. And it's kind of Gossip Girl vibes. The romance is toxic and angsty, and I love it. The reread kind of cemented that this is my favourite book in the whole series, I think. And yeah, all of the stars, I absolutely love it. So of course I read that in anticipation of Into the Dark coming out. So the next book is Magnolia Park's Into the Dark. Now, if you want more thoughts on this, this is in my reading 200 pages a day reading vlog, which, as I said at the start, I will leave linked below in the description if you want to check that out. This is the 5th book in the Magnolia Parks universe and the 3rd and final book following Magnolia and BJ. I'm just going to start by saying that I was a little bit disappointed with this book. One of the reasons that I love this series is because I'm toxic. I love the toxicity of the romance, and this book just wasn't that toxic. I know so many people will love this about this book, and I am really happy for Magnolia and BJ and their story in this book and the way that everything wraps up. But I guess the best way that I can describe it is it kind of felt like a really long epilogue. That's what this book felt like to me, and I am somebody who will not read epilogues. I don't care. As I said, I love this series so much. It's like it is probably my favourite series of all time still, and Magnolia Parks 1 and 2 are 2 5-star books for me. I absolutely adore them. So with that in mind, this one for me, of course, had a lot to live up to, and it just didn't. I missed the drama, I missed the angst. I also missed the interactions between a certain 2 characters that we just didn't really get enough of in this book, and I was made to fall in love with these characters and their relationship during The Long Way Home and Daisy Hates 2 as well, The Great Undoing. As I said, I'm toxic, and we just didn't get enough of that and them in this book for me. That was quite disappointing. But don't get me wrong, I did still love this. I love these characters. I love Jess's writing, and I love that we got to see BJ's character development, and we finally kind of got to see him being the amazing boyfriend and person that we hear so much about in the other books that he can be and is, but don't necessarily see in those books. I did also enjoy seeing the journey that we follow Magnolia and all of the other characters on, following the events of the end of the last books in this series. And I think that everything with that was done really well and written beautifully. So I did like this book. I just feel like I kind of needed to start with saying why this wasn't a 5-star for me, because I go on about this series all the time and I had such high expectations for this, of course, and it wasn't a 5-star, and that is sad, but it was still a 4-star, so I'm giving this book 4 stars. I don't think I've got anything else to say on this. I would love to know if some other people feel the same way as me. Okay, the next book is the other book that I read in my reading 200 pages a day video, and that is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This is a thriller, but is it? So in this book we follow Claire and Lydia, and 20 years ago when they were younger and growing up, their older sister went missing and was never found. Now in the present day there is a missing girl case, and it reminds them a lot about their sister's case. So we follow these 2 women fighting to discover the truth about what happened to their sister, as well as trying to find out what's going on in this new case. Now, the reason I question whether this is a thriller is because it just wasn't that thrilling, to put it bluntly. And I really don't mean that in a bad way, but it was just more of a mystery for me. It's not full of plot twists, but more we are following our 2 main characters discovering what's happened, basically. I absolutely loved, loved the relationship between the 2 sisters. And also we got some diary extracts from the dad that I really enjoyed as well, and they were heartbreaking, but I think a really good addition to this book. It was all very sad and emotional to read, I will say that. And there are some pretty graphic and disturbing scenes in this book. So please know that if you're thinking about picking this up and going in, it's not easy to read and you may want to look up the trigger warnings. So overall, I did enjoy this book, and overall I am gonna give it 4 stars. Okay, now we're getting into the books that I read for my Reading Dark Romance for a Week video. So all of these books that I read are on Kindle Unlimited, and that's how I read them. So the first one was The Sweetest Oblivion by Danielle Laurie. This was a fun mafia romance book. We follow Elena, who is the oldest daughter in a mafia family. Her younger sister is arranged to marry Nico Russo. Nico is the head of a rival mafia family. However, Nico and Elena, of course, have lots of chemistry, although obviously they hate each other. As I said, this was a lot of fun. I loved Nico in like a fictional bad boy kind of way. He was just pretty sexy, and yeah, it was a good time. It was quick, it was fun, and I will probably be continuing the rest of the series. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about this book, and I gave it 4 stars. The next book was Brutal Obsession by S. Massery, and I'm just gonna start by saying this was a hard DNF for me. To give you the summary, Grayson gets into a car accident at the start of this book, and he flees the scene and he puts the girl who was the passenger in the car in the driver's seat, so it looks like it was her. The driver of the other car was Violet, who is our female main character, and the accident caused her some quite serious injuries which have basically ruined her dancing career prospects. Fast forward 6 months and they basically end up at the same college, university, whatever, and basically he wants to ruin her life, and I'm not sure why. That part never made sense to me. And yeah, he does some really messed up shit. I read about 150 pages of this, so I gave it a good go, although this book I think is like 600 pages long. If you want more thoughts, you can watch the reading vlog. As I said, I spoke a lot more about it. I just couldn't read this. It was disturbing, it was gross, and I don't think I've ever disliked 2 main characters more in my life. Just was not for me. And then the final book that I read for this month and for this video was The Predator by Runix, and this is the first book in the Dark Verse series. This is another mafia romance, and similar to in The Sweetest Oblivion, we have Morana, who is the daughter of the head of a mafia family. She basically has some beef with this rival mafia family or mafia group, and specifically with Tristan Kane. The book follows a bit of a mystery plot, plus we have an enemies to lovers romance. This one was really hard for me to rate and decide my feelings on. I had a good time, but also some parts of this book were really annoying for me. There are really long inner monologues in this book, which really frustrated me. I felt like we were just going over the same thing again and again. We also didn't have much dialogue. Again, I am somebody who loves a lot of dialogue, and the plot was just quite slow moving, but also I quite enjoyed it. I think that the story for this romance specifically carries on into the next book in the series, so I will have to read that to kind of finish the romance. But I don't really understand why, because the whole first book just felt so dragged out, like it could have all just happened surely in one book. I'm intrigued enough to want to carry on and read the next book, but I also can't say I absolutely loved it. It was also written in 3rd person, which is not my favourite. And for a rating, I think I've settled on 3.5 stars. As I said, it's really hard for me to rate because I have such like conflicting opinions. Like I kind of enjoyed it, but also I kind of disliked a lot of things about it. But yeah, so 3.5 stars I think is where we're sitting. And those are all of the books that I read in February. I would love to know in the comments what your favourite book was that you read in February, and your thoughts on any of these books that I read if you have read them. I would love to discuss them with you. So if you want to talk in more detail about any of these books, feel free to message me on Instagram as well. I always leave it linked in my description. And yeah, that's it from me today. So thank you for watching, and I would love to see you in the next one.